Well, here we are in Central Florida. Just took a fantastic bird. You can see the wing barring on this bird is especially dark. And so what we think we're going to do with this bird is get what we would call a cape mount with the wings. Basically what that is that's the feathers that go here down the back in the middle with the tail fan attached, and then that mounts on top of the wings. And then you can also get a little placard. You can put your beard and your spurs in there as well. So it's a really great way, pretty simple way to display your prize. It's not as expensive as a full body mount, and it also doesn't take up as much room when you're putting that on the wall. You can actually mount that flat. But you have to be very careful. You have to know what you're doing when you're caping a turkey, because it's not as easy as it sounds. So what I'm going to do is show you step by step how to cape a turkey, and we've improvised just a little bit today. Since we're in Florida, we're honoring the palm tree. We have a great place to hang our turkey right here, ready-made, and we're going to start caping this bird. I'll show you the first step. So the first step is to identify where the feathers meet the skin here on the back of the neck. And once you do that, you want to make sure that you get plenty of that. You don't want to make it too short, you don't want to make it too long. They don't really use the skin on the head, but you do want to start where the feathers are here. The next thing you want to do is you want to identify this line, and if I spread this one apart, you can see that there is a really defined area where those feathers on the back of the turkey start, and the feathers on the front begin as well. So what you want to do is actually cut down that line all the way down across the wings, and then down into what they call the saddle of the turkey here. And you can also see where that area starts to separate too. So you don't want to get into these top feathers. You want to be real careful about that. If you leave a little bit of extra skin here, that's better than cutting into the back feathers. So your first incision is going to be right here at the base, and you cut down the side, and then you turn over and you do the next thing, and you start to peel this down as you go, leaving as little meat or as little blood in the cape as you possibly can. And one thing you can probably tell with this knife right here, it's actually a brand new knife. It's really, really sharp, and that's one of the things you're going to have is a lot of the taxidermists actually do this with a scalpel, and you need a very, very sharp knife so that you don't leave a lot of extra skin and you're not in there sawing around. It makes it a lot cleaner job when your knife is scalpel sharp, and this one is. All right, now we've kind of got it separated on this side. We're going to pull this bird around, go over to the other side. I may actually take his head loose and put it over here so you can switch it around. Normally what you would do is actually hang this bird from something suspended, a rope or some type of a string around his neck, so he's hanging straight down, and you can work on both sides when you turn the bird back and forth. So you can see I'm identifying this line in here on this bird again. On this side, you can see where these back feathers separate. There's a pretty good delineating line down through there. You just find that line again and start cutting. Start to see how that skin is going to be. This upper area here is pretty clean. A little bit of fat right in here. You can just come back through, scrape that off later. You do not want that fat in there, or that's going to cause the bird to start to rot. I'll show you how to get that off in just a minute. Now, we're probably to the trickiest part on the whole cape. Once you get here, the feathers get pretty thick. This is in the back of the bird. They've got a lot of what I would call under feathering. And this is an area where the bird tries to retain heat. So this under feathering right here can get kind of confusing between these back saddle feathers and the underside. And remember, you're better off taking a little too much than too little. So err on the side of caution. You can always trim it back off. Be very, very careful, because these feathers actually start to come to a point right here. And if you cut that skin off, then the tail fan is actually going to be separated from the cape. And while that's not catastrophic and can't be fixed, the regular guy that's trying to do his own cape is going to have a hard time doing that. So just be cautious at this point. I like to slide my finger down under the skin here, and that helps me know where the knife's going. Make sure it doesn't go through your finger. See, I'm trying to get just as little meat as I possibly can. That's the reason having this really sharp knife is important. Now the skin right here, you see how really fine, really thin this is getting? I actually put a little tiny hole right there. It's not a big deal. You just don't want a really big hole, and you don't want to cut the skin off. Alright, so on this side we're going to do the same thing. Now that we've got the cape off, you can actually see where this wing joins right here. You just find that joint back up in here, and this bone's called the humerus. This is where the humerus actually attaches to the clavicle, basically, like your collarbone in here, maybe. And so we're going to cut out in that joint right there. Wouldn't really worry about taking too much meat on this cut. Most of the time you need to take these to a taxidermist unless you've done it yourself, because it's really hard to get all the bone and all the meat out of these wings. Taxidermists do it for a living, so they've got scalpels and ways to do that. If you leave any meat or any bone in there, it's going to decay and you're not going to be happy with your mount. So basically what you're trying to do here is give your taxidermist plenty to work with. It's kind of like caping a deer. Too much is great because he can cut that off. Too little and he's going to have a problem. So you can see here, I found the ball joint. You'll see that ball sticking out. Just cut around that joint. Be careful not to cut yourself. Once you get that joint removed, just cut down the inside of it here till you get the skin and the bone off of there. And now you have the wing, just like that. You can have plenty to work with for the taxidermist. Repeat on the other side. Alright, so what you got here is, it kind of can look like a mess because it's wet, it's kind of nasty. What you need to do here is you need to start in the middle. You can see how the skin pulls back. And you need to just work your way up. And so a lot of times this kind of upper end will kind of roll up, roll around. You need to smooth it back down. Smooth those feathers down. Get it nice and flat. As you work your way back up, you'll see how this is going to open up. If you've ever skinned a reptile, sort of looks like a reptile skin when you're stretching that thing out. And then you're going to spread it all the way back right here, okay? Smooth that down as you go, lay it nice and flat. So you're going to smooth it back just like this. So, working our way back to the tail, you can see that extra skin there. Now, if you'll remember, I was talking about this feather pattern. And you can see right here that feather pattern. These areas here where the feathers actually are. So all this other skin here is actually a little bit of extra stuff. And I wouldn't trim it all the way down to the edge, but I would trim some of this excess off. You can see where I got a little excess on that side because of the way the bird was hanging. But the really important thing you do at this step, and this is a fatty area. Every bird's going to have this. So every bird that you do, you're probably going to end up with a little bit of meat and a little bit of fat right here in this area. This is where it's really important that you have a sharp NWTF knife. So what I'm doing here is just kind of doing a real careful removal with a real sharp knife, and I'm skinning this fat and meat back off. And you can see I'm just leaving the skin. You can also take your fingers in there, just pull that off as you go. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually using the knife blade as a scraper. I've got most of this started back, and so I'm going to scrape this fat and this meat to where I just have feathers and skin. Okay, so now I've spent some time scraping. I got a little bit more meat there to go. Just pull that off with your fingers. Might need to do it one more time. A lot of times I'll let it dry just a little bit. That lets this fat set up just a tad. It's not as gooey. I'll let it dry just a little bit, and then I'll come back and scrape it again. Now you can see right here, this is where that sharp knife actually may work against you. I cut a little bitty hole in the skin right here. Not going to be a big deal. Go ahead and be able to salvage that, but just be careful when you're doing this. And getting all the meat off, and as you can see there, it's a nice cape. And when I flip that over, I'll show you how it's going to look on the back side. There it is. So you can spread that tail fan and cut that excess there off. Here's your nice cape. Alright, so this is how it's going to look when it's all said and done. You can see how the fan or the cape is here. You can see the feathers spread out. A lot of taxidermists may actually turn this over, flip it over, do it the other way. I kind of like it looking natural here. You can see this particular bird has just those really dark Osceola wing bars, and I think it's just a fantastic choice for this bird, and a lot of birds really. And then obviously you can put the beard and the spurs, you know, anywhere you want to in this arrangement. A lot of taxidermists get really innovative and creative with it, and you can see a couple pictures of how this can look and different variations of it. But it's just a beautiful way to represent that trophy and keep those memories alive for a lifetime.